are you?
I'm good. How are you? Eduardo, nice to see you.
It's so good to see you, and thank you for staying up a little later than usual. It's 10:30 for you.
I'd usually be asleep.
How are things in London, my friend?
They're like everywhere, you know. I mean, everybody's locked in. So the last time I saw you, I had shorter hair than this. My hair's going out.
Yeah, well, but you've lost a little bit of weight. Have you been like exercising at home? Or
Yeah,
something?
doing a bit of exercise, you know. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Well,
Not
I'm drinking something delicious to honor the wine that made it on second place in your list. Obviously, not the same vintage, but I was going over your Argentina report, and I wanted to focus on that a little bit. You know, last time
I'm drinking this. There we go.
Oh my God! I was talking to Alejandro Vigil about a week ago.
2013, Nicolas. I thought I'd join you.
No, cheers, my friend. Let's do a little virtual toast right here.
There we go.
Yeah. So
and also,
you know,
also the first Instagram live I ever did was with you.
Oh my God!
And that's why it was so bad. It was so bad.
But now you've become so good at it. I keep watching you with journalists from all over the world. Obviously, you're the kind of person who sets up tendencies all over the world, and a score of yours or a review, I don't think it's gonna make or break a winery, but it sways a lot of consumers. You know, people that trust your palate and trust and value your opinion. That you're a very independent and transparent reviewer and taster and a master of wine. You know,
you should be doing my publicity. You're brilliant.
I was saying in my post that talking to you is like talking to a Jedi. It's like 200 of you in the world, right? Masters of wine.
No, I think we're 380 or something now.
Yeah, well, 380 is not that many, believe me. So you know, last time we tried to.
I think more people. There are more masters of wine than people who've been in space.
Yeah, exactly. Only
not on the moon, obviously, but
on the moon. Yeah, well,
not on the moon. In space.
in space. But there are fewer masters of wine than master somms, for example.
No, there are fewer master somms.
There are fewer master somms?
Yeah. Well, I think master somms are about 270 or something like that. Someone watching will probably know who's the master somm. Ronan Sayburn would know if he's watching, but he's probably asleep. But no, I think we're 370, 380, and they're 270, 280, something like that. Yeah, I mean,
is it an equivalency? Is it an equivalency? For example, you're a lawyer in the United States, a master somm, and a lawyer in Britain is a master of wine. What is there an analogy?
No, not really. They're international exams, both of them, and they're both really difficult. I mean, the big difference, obviously, is that the Master Somm exam, as it should have, has a large service element, which, needless to say, all wine writers would fail because it's you know, service is something you learn, you know, and it's difficult to do service well is tough. To do service badly, anybody can do that, but I think to do service is hard to do it well. No, Master Somm is a tough exam.
You're also a brilliant photographer, and I'm seeing. Are those yours? The ones in the, are those yours and the ones in the back?
No, they're not actually. Can you see those?
I see. I think is that Mick Jagger right there?
That's Mick Jagger. Yeah,
love the Stones. I'm a huge fan of the Stones.
That picture was both those pictures. The one above it is Samuel Beckett, and both of those were taken by the same photographer. Who's a woman called Jane Bown, who died now. But she, when I got engaged to my wife, she took the engagement photographs for us. So
great.
So she's quite a famous portrait photographer, but she's dead now, unfortunately. But I bought those two pictures from her. There are others.
Yeah, great. I love the black and white and how elegant they look behind you. So last time we attempted to talk, you were about to publish your Uruguay report. And now you just published the Argentina one. Obviously, a bigger country with more wineries, more, I guess, following international. And I mean, I've been reading Clarín, La Nación, and whenever you publish one of these reports, it causes waves of comments. And obviously, you have created, once again, your sort of awards where you describe and think and you obviously state your opinion as to who's the winemaker of the year, the best red, the best rosé. And this is your largest, biggest, most thorough Argentina report ever, right?
Yes, it is. It's about 82,000 words.
Yeah.
And when you look back and you think, shit, I wrote that in 3 weeks. How did I do that?
What's the process, Tim? You travel to Argentina. I know you're there for 3 weeks. You take a laptop and then you prepare like a draft, and then you bring that back. What? I know you taste a shitload of wine, and I know you meet a lot of people and take cool kick-ass photos. But what's the process to put this out?
Okay, so basically, I traveled for 3 weeks, and I think I'm unusual amongst critics who cover Argentina. That I spend a lot of time in the regions and in the wineries. So I taste in the wineries, and I like to go to I like to go to the vineyards as much as I can. I limit myself to about 80 to 100 wines a day. I mean, it's very rare I do more than 100 wines in a day, because I think after that you get a bit tired, and I want to have time to ask questions, stuff like that. So I'm there for 3 weeks. I don't write on a computer. I never have done. I take notes in a book, which means I then have to rewrite the notes afterwards. But I don't know about you. I mean, I know some people like it and they find it very easy. But I find if I'm interviewing somebody and I have a computer up, it feels a bit like a wall, you know, in that it puts a barrier between me and the producer. And I want the conversation to be as natural as possible, so that when I'm taking notes, they'll tell me stuff, basically. And I find if I'm sitting there with the computer, it's like you're working in a courtroom. You know, you were talking about lawyers before. Yeah. It feels almost a bit too formal and distancing. So I don't do that. But it means I have to spend a lot of time writing the notes when I get back. But I've got the notes pretty much written.
But I love that homage to the old days. Not that you're old, but you're a journalist.
I am.
You started out as a journalist, and you like those journalists that would go to the crime scenes and take notes on the little like pocket book, little notebooks. And then, how many wineries do you visit a day?
I usually do about 5 or 6. You know, one of those is usually in the evening with a dinner. But I never taste wine with food. Normally, what I do is I do the tasting and then I'd have dinner with them afterwards, basically.
Right, and then they set up.
They dream of having a collection of those notebooks. God, you know what? Vero, I threw half of them away 2 years ago.
A lot of people.
I noticed that Jancis gave her notebooks to a library somewhere as a kind of collection or something in the Smithsonian Institute or something.
Well, you should. You're a brilliant writer as well. I mean,
thank you.
Your prose is beautiful, and the insight and the depth and the fact that you're a big cheerleader, because I've never seen you bashing a wine or a winery. If you don't like something, maybe you don't publish it, or maybe you're very elegant in the way you phrase things.
Yeah, I publish it, or I just give it a bad score, but I don't write a tasting note on it. You know,
because you know that at the end of the day, a lot of people live from selling those wines and collecting those grapes, and they do. But I love the fact that when something excites you, you really throw your enthusiasm. There's a lot of sort of energy, and you can sort of grasp your words and feel that you're there, that you're actually there. I recently purchased your Rioja report, and I was doing an interview with Carlos San Pedro from Pujanza, and with Julio Sainz from La Rioja Alta, and they all love you, and the fact that you're not intimidating. You get there, you're very well, you are. I am sure that you are when you're there, but they know that you're going to be fair. You're going to be fair.
I think that's important, don't you? I think it's important I mean, it makes me laugh sometimes that you go to a winery and you notice that people are very very nervous, and you always want to say, you can see why in a way, because there are other opinions, but you can have an impact on their life. You're right. I mean, more in terms of a positive one than a negative one. I think if you suddenly say, I've just discovered this amazing wine, Alto Yaco, Amari Vivid, Matthias Etchart, that wine has gone from, I mean, he's produced 3 vintages, and now I've made him a first growth, because I thought this wine is amazing. He deserves it, with these wines. It's an incredible place, Quebrada de San Lucas, and I thought, this guy's a superstar, you know. And I think the job of a wine writer is not to say that Nicolas Catena Zapata is a fantastic wine or Cheval is a great wine, because we know that, or even more so to say that Latour is a great wine, or Harlan Estate is a great wine. We all know these things, but I think it's much harder and much more important to say a wine like Arcayaco Amaribid is a future superstar, because then you're telling people something that's useful to them. You know,
well, you're expanding the platform, because the Latours of life, the Catena in Argentina, they're already in the pinnacle. So you're expanding the universe, and that's beautiful. I have some notes here. Mine are in the computer. So you state that David Bonomi of Norton and Per Se is your winemaker of the year. And Norton obviously is a big winery. We get a bunch of their wines here in Puerto Rico. And Per Se is a little bit more boutique. It's more limited. And what I was excited and at the same time intrigued is how this guy can be the winemaker behind a very large winery and something more small and boutique. What can you tell me about David Bonomi?
Well, and that's exactly the reason I chose him, because I think that it's not easy to make small quantities of very high quality wine, right? But it's in some ways it's easier than making very large volumes of something that's very good. You know, it's actually quite hard to do that. And we always focus as wine writers and communicators on the top. And Per Se is you know, it was my red wine of the year, was the Uni del Bonesant. But there are 381 bottles made of this incredible wine from, again, somewhere I think is already one of the great terroirs of South America and will be of the world, I think. But I wanted to give it to him because he almost does two different jobs, and he does them both brilliantly and in a complementary way. So he's shown that he can take. He's almost doing Bordeaux and Burgundy, if you like. So he's doing a Burgundy. He's doing a tiny focus wine on a little, you know, this little fingernail of vineyard, and at the same time,
I want to say hi to a dear friend from Chile. Hopefully one day you can
do
an interview with Miguel from Vinterra, Chile.
He's asked me to. He's asked me to. I said in 2 weeks.
He's a great guy.
I'm Instagrammed out.
Well, you're an expert now, my dear Tim. You're an expert. So the other thing that really caught my attention is that your winemaking legend, Susana Balbo, she has been given pleasure to the world with her incredible wines for I don't know how many years. I have an interview scheduled with her, and she's another person that can make wines from the Brios line, which is affordable, and then really, really high-end stuff like Nosotros. I'm sure that you've met with Susana for many times in your trips to Argentina. And she's a figure that's larger than life. How would you say her style has evolved? Because we know that the wine world shifts from extracted big wines to more nuanced wines. How has Susana winemaking evolved?
Well, I think there's been one of the big changes, and there's a link with Per Se as well, because her viticultural manager, and he's also involved in the winemaking, because for a while Susana was a politician. She was a very high-ranking politician in the Macri government, really. She was a diputada. And so she didn't have that much time to do that and run a successful winery. So she was still doing it and involved in it. But Eddie was very involved. And Eddie is the partner with David Bonomi in Per Se. And Eddie is a very experienced guy. Before that, he was at Doña Paula. He knows vineyards. He knows the Uco very well. And I think he has shifted the wines away from oak in particular and away from American oak. Susana was using quite a bit of American oak in her red wines. And we used to have this debate every year about it. And she said, well, the market likes it, which it does. But I think the market is slightly moving away from that sweeter style of Argentinian red wine, what we call the kind of vino caramello in a way, and they're moving towards these fresher, brighter, slightly more elegant, and I think better balanced wines. And I think Susana's wines, Susana above all things, is a very smart businesswoman. You know, she's a great winemaker as well, but she understands that you need to move with the times. And I think by bringing Eddie in, Eddie has helped, and her children too, because her children are both involved, her son and daughter. and you know, they've also done some. They've also brought their perspective, I think, to what she's doing. So I think the style has shifted perceptibly, but not radically. I mean, if you were a Susanna Balbo drinker 5 years ago and you're one now, you wouldn't think, shit, what's this? You know, you'd still see a continuity of style. But I think that the styles of her wine has definitely shifted, has changed.
You mentioned in your report that you went to Argentina for the first time in the early 90s. I think it was 92 or 93.
92, yeah.
92. And then obviously you just launched your latest report. There's 28 years right there. Yeah. Was Argentina at some point in the early 90s in the same category as today's wines, more nuanced, more elegant, and then you saw the curve of extraction, oak, high alcohol, or was it always like that and then the tide has turned?
Yeah, I think the early 90s, and particularly taste wines from the 80s and the 70s, they're certainly lower in alcohol, but often they were lower in alcohol because the volumes were bigger. I think they were just, the yields were higher. But also there was, I think this idea of balance, natural balance, was something that came naturally, as it were, to a country that's basically Italian, you know, Italian, Spanish. And so they were used to drinking wine with food. So I think you have a point. What the big change really was in the late 80s, early 90s, and continued into the 90s, which was when Michel Rolland arrived and Paul Hobbs came, and those guys started telling people to pick riper. And to make bigger wines, often with more oak and more colour. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, because that was very much part of the trend at the time. It was a global thing. You know, the '82 vintage in Bordeaux really changed the world of wine, I would say, for probably 20 years. You know, but maybe a bit more. Maybe
when did you?
I think there's been a big change. I think what you said is right, that beforehand they were making lighter wines,
leaner,
not always for the right reasons or in the right places. Do you know what I mean? But I think now they're making the best wines that have elegance, precision, and a sense of place. Yeah.
Exactly. I know you're very excited about. I know you're excited about Uspallata. I've been reading you're crazy about Uspallata. And the other day when I was talking to Alejandro Vigil, we were talking about some Mediterranean varietals like Grenache, Mourvedre, that will also have a place in the new Argentina. What I want to ask you is, you've been going back to Argentina for the last decade, perhaps once a year. At what time in this past decade did you say, oh my God, there's change coming to Argentina? When did you start noticing this shift back to more elegant, ethereal, more terroir-driven wines?
I think I've really noticed it in the last 5 years, I would say. But I think it's, you know, it was there before. You know, people like the Michelinis and what Sebastian Zucardi was doing, what Alejandro Vigil is doing with El Enemigo. I think lots of people have been moving in that direction. Sehanovic, as you mentioned. I think a lot of people were already looking in that direction. But I think it's now become almost an unstoppable trend. I think the best wines are moving in that direction. And even if you look at a wine like Cobos, and he was my young winemaker of the year this year, Andres Vignoni, he's had a big influence on what Paul Hobbs is doing. I mean, Paul Hobbs, a bit like Susanna, is a smart guy. He's a very good businessman, and he's also a fantastic winemaker. And he also has seen the market. And, you know, Cobos is still a big wine, but I think he's listened to Andres, which is crazy because Andres is 32 or something, and allowed him to influence the style of those Viña Cobos wines. And I think they're better for it, basically.
You're hitting it right on the nail on the head right there. This Cheval is delicious, but it's 15% alcohol, 2014. The style has changed from this Cheval to the one you gave, you know, the second place. I mean, there's a lot of chocolate here, a lot of oak. It's delicious, but it's a wine that maybe you need a knife and a fork to drink it.
I think 16 was and I think 16 was a very important vintage in Argentina, and that it was a very difficult vintage. It was wet. It was a Nino year, so it was a bit like, in a way, 1998. Right? I went there in 1998 during the harvest. And I didn't see the Andes once because they were just it was rain the whole time.
There is Susana there. Susana Val is right there greeting you.
Hey, Susana.
Susana, I would love to have you on the program one of these days. I had your signature Malbec a little while ago in Puerto Rico, and it was beautiful.
Hey, so, Susana, we're talking about you.
Yeah,
so,
we're talking about you.
And I was saying, I think 16 was an important vintage because it was a cooler vintage. It was more European, in inverted commas, entre comillas, and therefore people saw that you could still make good wine, even in difficult vintages. And I think people made much better wines in 2016 than they made in 1998. They got better at dealing with these wetter vintages. I mean, the wet vintages are going to be rare now because I think we're into a cycle of climate change where vintages are basically getting drier, you know.
My other question, Tim, for you, you noticed in 2016, maybe the last 5 years, there's been a change. And I'm sure that over this past decade, whenever you would go to Argentina, you would have Malbec. Maybe like 80% of your wines were Malbec, I guess.
Yeah.
At what time in the last decade did you start noticing, oh my God, they're bringing me Cab Franc, they're bringing me Pinot Noir? Yeah. At what time did you started to see that sort of, not a departure, but a little bit of a break of Malbec?
Yeah, I would say 10, 15 years, although, I mean, Malbec was diminished massively in planting. So there was a big vine pull scheme at the end of the 80s and the early 90s, and Malbec went down to 9,000 hectares in the whole of Argentina. And now it's back at 44. So there are waves of popularity. And Malbec was not that popular, really. I mean, it became popular again. But I think these Malbec blends, particularly with Cabernet Sauvignon and Cab Franc and sometimes with Merlot, using fruit from Luján, so that the area close to Mendoza, and then the Uco Valley, which is higher and generally speaking cooler, has always been a Mendoza thing, to blend grapes across regions. So I think these blends have always been there. Malbec blends with other things. Your other point about, you know, Cab Franc, I think the Malbec Cab Franc sort of split, which tends to be kind of 80-20, 80 Malbec, 20 Cab Franc as a general rule, is something really of the last decade where we're seeing a lot of those styles of wine, and it's become very fashionable and great, you know, because I think Cabernet Franc is an amazing variety in Argentina. It really is. The other things you mentioned, I think Bonarda, you know, the people who do it well do it really well. You know, like Ali Vigil, obviously, and Seba Zucardi, and you know, Carlos. There are probably half a dozen people that do a good job with it. But I think that other people are working with Criolla Chica, which is the original Argentinian red grape, Listan Prieto País, I'm sure, as you obviously know. And I think that's an interesting grape. So I think the diversity that's, in a sense, has always been there in theory, because Argentina has hundreds of grape varieties that were planted by, you know, the French and the Spanish and the Italians and the English and all sorts of people. Now it's actually starting. We're seeing that diversity in the bottle as opposed to in blends. Yeah.
The other day I saw you with Alberto Antonini from Alto Las Hormigas, brilliant winemaker. I love certain Argentine Malbecs or blends that have this sort of salty, some sort of ocean, some sort of notes of the sea that cleanse your palate. They feel fresh. And have you also noticed the alcohol levels lowering as of the past 2-3 years?
Absolutely. I think people who were producing 15 and a half are now producing 14 and a half. People producing 14 are producing 13 and a half. And I don't think low alcohol is an aim in itself. You know, I think you can have a balanced wine at 14.5% alcohol and an unbalanced wine at 12.5% alcohol. So I don't think it's just a question of lower alcohol. I think but definitely people picking a little bit earlier for natural acidity rather than having to acidify their wines is another part of this tendency, you know, of the new Argentina. And the big wines are still there, and they have a market and they're popular. And that's great, but they're not necessarily the wines that I want to write about and help to promote in a way. And I think it's funny. I mean, some people say that if you're a master of wine, you should be able to judge a wine as a wine and say, I don't like it, but I still think it's a really good wine. And I could do that to a degree, but I think in the end, as a critic, you have to write about the wines you really love and say, look, I love this, it's brilliant. And if I love it, you know, and I say to you, hey, you've got to buy this wine, it's amazing, man. And you go out and buy, you say, do you know what, you're right. But if I say, hey, if, you know, I gave this a high score, but I don't really like it, are you going to buy it? You're probably going to think,
somebody said Semillon. Semillon is producing great results in Chile and Argentina.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that you've, and I also want to talk about Torrontés. I love Torrontés. I totally love it. I think it's so aromatic. It reminds me so much of good Rieslings. But a Semillon, what can you tell me about Semillon and its future in Argentina?
Well, huge. I mean, funnily enough, it was only 2 days ago somebody asked me about this, and I realized it was true. That my white wine of the year in Chile this year was the Semillon. It was the Granito from Buchon. And my white wine of the year in Argentina was the Semillon, which was the El Peral.
I have it right here.
Certezas from Michelini and Mufato and Michelini.
So when I'm not looking at you, I'm looking at the guide, and I have it right here.
So that's
you know, you're excited.
So and both of those are old vine vineyards. I think Granito is probably from the 30s. And the vineyard in El Peral that produces Certezas is 1895 or something. So the Semillon...
Lisa M76 was the one who mentioned Semillon.
Yeah.
And then we got a bunch of questions. What's next?
Okay, well, I mean, just to finish on the Semillon, I think I totally agree on Semillon. There's not much Semillon planted in both countries, but I think it's a great variety with incredible potential. The best Semillons, I think, in both those countries are world-class. But both those wines, Granito and Certezas, I think are amazing wines, credible wines. Yeah. I mean, you know, when you taste a wine, because I remember tasting with the Michelinis, and I just said, that is so good. And they kind of laughed. And I said, no, it's so good. And at the end of the taste, I said, I've got to try that again. And I tasted it again. And I just went, woo.
And I bet, you know, after so many years tasting Chardonnays and Sauvignon Blancs all over the world, it's nice when they bring you a variety that perhaps it's not so, you know, it's not the one that first comes to mind. And in a way, you're showing something different, something new to the world. Somebody's saying Patagonia. Patagonia is a region. Well, I'm going to do an interview with Noemia next week. And they're getting very, with hands. They're getting incredible reviews and ratings from you. What can you tell us about Patagonia?
Okay, well, the Semillon that they might be talking about, Hans makes a good one. Even greater, if I may say so, is the Riccitelli one that Matthias Riccitelli makes. An old vine Patagonia Semillon from Agen. Agen was named after an Englishman called Mr. Allen, who built the first bridge over the Rio Negro. And there's this little sign on the bridge that says, Mr. Allen was the designer of the bridge. He was the engineer of the bridge. Right? I mean, that's three. Those are the three best Semillons in the country for me are Mendel from Paraje Altamira, the Certezas, which is from El Peral, and the Semillon from Michelini down in Patagonia. I think those three are world-class wines, definitely. I mean, whoever said that, Riccitelli, yes, I agree.
There's a question from one of the viewers saying, "What's next?" I think you already touched on it a bit, but after Malbec, where do you see Malbec will be around and will still be making incredible wines, but where do you see the future of Argentina in the next 5-10 years? Other grapes or regions? Maybe I know you like to talk about regions rather than grapes. But I know I talked to Patricio Tapia, a brilliant Chilean wine writer the other day, and he told me about. And great guy, and he told me about the Camino de Monasterio in Gualtallarí, an area where you have most of.
Well, that's what Perse is.
Exactly, that's incredible soil. So to answer some of the viewers, what do you see in the next 5-10 years emerging and being established in Argentina as you know, meat and potato?
I think new regions we've mentioned Uspallata. I think La Carrera. In the northern part of the Uco Valley, very cold, and some of the vineyards there are 1,700 meters. I see that Gerardo Michelini is watching, and I did a tasting with Matthias, his brother, in La Carrera in February last year, which was a summer's day, and I was so cold I couldn't feel my fingers. We were tasting in the vineyard. So I would say La Carrera and El Espinillo, which is another high altitude area in the Uco Valley, top end of the Uco Valley, where Chandon or terrazas have really good vineyards up there. Fantastic area. The other area that I think has real potential, two areas. One is Chubut. Someone I noticed said Patagonia has.
I think the signal got bad. Tim. Oh God, I lost him. I don't know if the others are seeing him. Hope he comes back. It's loading. See Tim? Oh, Tim left. Let me see if I can reconnect with him. Sí, se fue. He left.
Here we go. We're back.
Let's see. There, we're back. We're back in business.
Yeah,
we're back in business. It was only a 30-second hiccup. So you were telling me a little bit about that.
Yes,
region.
I was just saying to finish with those regions. The two other areas I think are very exciting. One is Chubut, and slightly further north from Chubut, the Atlantic bit of Rio Negro, where Wapisa are, where Fincas Patagónicas are. In the south of Chubut, I think what Otronia are doing in Sarmiento is an incredible area. The most southerly vineyards in the world now. Very cool, windy, but incredible potential. The other area, and this may surprise you, that I think has got real potential is Buenos Aires, the province of Buenos Aires. There are, I think with climate change, we're going to see more and more stuff moving towards the Atlantic and moving south and moving up into the Andes.
The great Ale Vigil, the great Yoda, Ali's there as well. There is a difficult question from the audience there. It says, if you can recommend one wine of Argentina to try, which would it be? Do you have one? Can you say one?
No, there are too many styles. It's like saying, can you recommend one French wine? Because, you know, the wines, as somebody said, Patagonia, you know, Rio Negro is not like Neuquén. You know, Neuquén is not like Chubut, you know. So I think it's very difficult. It depends on a number of things.
Yeah, it
depends on what you're eating.
Do you ever?
It depends. Listen, it depends who's paying, right? Don't you think? I mean, there's some wines.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you know, Uni del Bonisant, my top wine this year. Someone that Uni del Bonisant is an amazing wine, but it's expensive. You know, there's some of the top Argentinian wines you got to pay. Ali, we should tell Ali. Ali, I'm drinking this. 13. Yeah. Very good.
I was drinking. When I did my interview with him, I think I was also drinking that one. We're gonna do an interview towards the end of the month on El Enemigo. You know, here in Puerto Rico, I'm not in the trade. You know, I'm just a blogger, a lawyer that I do this for fun. But the Richitele wines are not here. And I keep reading about all of the good accolades they have. And here in Puerto Rico, we get some of the best wines all over the world. And I'm dying to have those wines in Puerto Rico. I'm really looking forward to that. From Matias.
I'm sure he'd be happy to sell you some.
I'd be glad to serve as a broker, an honest broker here with some importers.
Did you see the interesting question? Somebody said, how has Argentinian wine influenced the rest of the world? Did you see that question?
I saw it. Yeah.
I think that's an interesting question because
usually
because usually people take it from the other way around. They say, how have the French influenced Argentina? And I think that you could definitely say that Argentina has had a massive influence on Cahors, right? So the Malbecs being produced in Cahors have been changed beyond recognition by what's happening in Argentina. I mean, Cahors Malbec used to be undrinkable. It was like, you know, really chewy. And now it's still firmer because it's a cooler place, obviously, than most bits of Argentina. But it's definitely got softer and brighter, and there's just more fruit definition. It's not all structured or built on tannin, really.
When I was doing my interview with Alejandro Vigil, I was drinking a 2011 Nicolás Catena Zapata, the same one you have there.
Yeah.
And it was mostly Cabernet Sauvignon. and it was so beautiful. It was 13.9 alcohol. So Alejandro has always been a bit ahead of the curve. He's always, I think he can see the future in many ways. Like if you can ask Alejandro to buy the lottery, he can give you the winning numbers for 2022, perhaps. So Alejandro,
tell us, man.
Ale, tell us the winning numbers for the lottery. But I had this wine that was mostly Cabernet Sauvignon from 2012 at 13.9, and it was so fresh, so elegant. And I think Cabernet Sauvignon, when it's well made in Argentina, is also beautiful. It can be nuanced, elegant, complex, and fresh and balanced. It doesn't have to be this sort of chocolate milkshake like some Napa.
That's the same. Can you see it?
13.9. Yeah, 13.5.
13.5. Lovely.
And what's the blend there? How much?
This would be Cabernet Sauvignon and Malbec. The percentages. Uvas Cabernet Sauvignon doesn't say. But you know, I don't know because it varies. My guess would be probably 60-40, 60 Malbec. If Ali's watching, he'll know because he made it. What was
exactly.
What was the blend? What was the blend in 2000? 13 was a good vintage. I like 13 because it was cool and dry, right? So
I'm trying
not cool
to buy
and wet.
13. Is the vintage my son was born, so I'm trying to cellar those wines. When you travel to this, do you think that will hold for 15-20 years?
Yeah, definitely, no problem. You know, it's drinking beautifully. It's drinking beautifully at 7 years old. You could definitely have that. I mean, I've had old Catena Zapatas, which have been superb. You know, it definitely ages, and it's interesting. I think a lot of the super premium wines in Argentina are blends, right? They're not pure Malbec. So I'm trying to think. I mean, you know, Cheval obviously is a blend. This is a blend. What you know? I'm trying to think of pure Malbecs that hit high prices. Nomia, maybe.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, obviously the Catena wines now, the Mundus Bacillus and Terra
and
Fortuna.
the Fortuna Terra, exactly.
Yeah, those and also the wines from per se, you know, Uni and.
Do you ever? I'm curious about this. It's more of a personal question. Do you ever score a wine? Well, not that you give the final score, but when you smell the wine, you haven't even tasted it yet. You know that, oh my God, this wine will be a 95 plus wine. Like, do you ever have that sort of gut feeling that just by smelling it, this is amazing?
You know, it's happened to me 3 times in the last couple of years, or 4 times really, in Argentina. One was with Uspallata, the first time I tasted that. But the first time I tasted Uspallata Malbec was not with Colo. It was with the Pulentas, because the Pulentas were involved with that vineyard before him. And I tasted this wine from barrel. And I think they may have had some Pinot as well. And it was incredible. So that was one.
With Eduardo or with Carlos?
With Edu, yeah. With Eduardo, yeah.
Great guy, good friend, yeah.
Yeah, really, really good wine. That was one. I would say the Stafile wine that they make, the Dragon del Vino, which is from Potrerillos, is pretty spectacular. I mean, I don't think they're using. It's only a tiny little area of the vineyard they're using. I think those two. Altura Maxima. I think that wine.
Oh yeah.
The first time I tasted that and smelled that, I thought, because I've been saying to Thibaut,
that's Donald Hess. That's.
Yeah.
Altura
and every time I went to
Colomé,
Colomé, I said, "Come on, Thibaut, show me the wine. Show me the wine." He says, "Not ready. It's not ready." I said, "Thibaut, for fuck's sake, show me the wine." And he went, "Okay, here's the wine." And I was with Oscar, and we both tasted it, and we both said, "You've got to let us write about this. This wine is unbelievable."
That's still owned by Donald Hess, right?
I think by his family. I think he's still alive, Donald, isn't it? But I think he's retired now. So.
When you travel to these regions and you're like really excited about certain wines, do you buy and bring back home? Like if I go to Tim Atkin's cellar, do I find Argentine wines there?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I buy most of it back here, but I bring as much as I can back. I mean, now it's harder, but I can bring 3 bottles back. So I tend to bring things back that I can't find here. And that are super interesting. I brought back a Chenin Blanc this year from Gerardo Michelini and Andrea Muffatto. I was going to put into a wine tasting in South Africa, But so far, I haven't been able to go to South Africa because I can't travel, obviously, like everybody else. But that's one wine. I often bring back like the Bequignol. Do you know that wine from Livera, the Scala Umana wine? Because I just think it's interesting. And it's brilliant. You know. A Bequignol, it's fun, you know.
So, you've been with me
so yeah, I've lost
with your time. No, I'm here. I'm here. I want to be respectful with your time. It's a little bit late there. So it seems to me that Argentina has made a name for itself with red wines all over the world. I mean, they're regarded for their red wines mostly. I think Torrontés, even though it's a beautiful grape, I don't think it has gone, you know, mainstream all over the world. Do you think Semillon will occupy that spot of that white varietal that will put Argentina in the map, or is Chardonnay already taking care of that, like white bones, white stones?
I think for the time being, Chardonnay is Argentina's best bet internationally, right? And I think the best Chardonnays in Argentina are as good as the best Chardonnays in Chile now, right? Semillon to me is more interesting because I like old vine Semillon, and not many places in the world do it. I mean, obviously Australia does, but it's a very different style. You don't often find pure Semillon in Bordeaux. You know, you generally find it blended with Sauvignon Blanc. So that's another thing. Torrontés, I agree with you. I think that when it's good, and Susana's watching, and Susana Balbo, I think what she's done with Torrontés is super interesting. What El Esteco are doing in the north is really good. And a new wine this year from Fabre Montmayou, Altayari, which is a high altitude Hualtairi Torrontés, really good. So I think there are probably 4 or 5 really top Torrontés. But and the history of Torrontés is fascinating. You know, I just think it's, you know, it's again, it's a Creole variety. You know, it's a mix of Listan and Moscatel. You know, it's the history of the New World in many ways.
They're asking about Chenin Blanc. Do you see Chenin Blanc as a player in Argentina in the future?
Yeah, but not enough of it. You know, that's the problem. Yeah, I mean, you know, who makes one? La Revancha make a good one. Well, and also Michelini, Mufato again. They do everything. Those guys. They're you know, the Michelinis. Their reds are good too, but I think their whites are really exciting. I really like
from Michelini. From Michelini, I think he's a consultant with Felipe Stati, the one who was the guitar player in Anitos Verdes.
Great.
I think he Michelini is one of his consultants, I believe.
Yeah,
and in terms,
I think he works with Marcelo Pelleriti, doesn't he?
Oh, with Pelleretti. It wasn't Marcelo Pelleretti.
Yeah, he works with Marcelo Pelleretti.
With Marcelo
he was
Pelleretti.
Good this year. He said to me, this year is, I can't remember what the anniversary is. He said it's something like the 30th anniversary of the band or something, and we're going on tour. And I said, what are you going to call the tour? And he said, we were thinking about Still Alive.
It's never been more true. It's never been more true. Let me tell you that. Yeah, look, Lisa M76 is bringing a very good name. Lisa, hola, te saludo. Monteviejo. Obviously, they're making awesome wines. Still not available in Puerto Rico, those.
Yeah, sorry.
You've been impressed with those.
Yeah, I mean, they're slightly more of the riper style. I mean, Monteviejo is inside the Club Los Siete, so it's in Campo Los Andes. It's a slightly warmer terroir, although they're sort of halfway plus up the slope. Marcelo is very much influenced by the Michel Rolland style, you know, and he's worked in Chateau Leguet, in Pomerol, and he makes quite bold, fleshy styles of wine. But I would say he too is changing, that his wines have also become a bit more elegant in the last 5 years. So yeah, I mean, I think he's a great guy, a very good winemaker, and he's fun to be around, you know, for music as well. You know, he knows all these musicians. He loves playing the guitar. He's one of my favorite people in Argentina. Lovely guy.
And to wrap up, Tim, sparklers. Do you see sparkling wines? I know you gave Cruzat a top position in your sort of best of the best in the year. Do you see a future, or do you see already a sort of excellence in sparklers, or you think there's still a way to climb up in that ladder?
I think at the moment there are 3 or 4 producers. Chandon, obviously, although they're more focused on volume. Crusat, which is the best for me. Rossel, Boer, I think is very good, and there's a connection with Crusat, isn't there? And then I think that Domaine Vistalba, so the other side of the Polenta family, the Carlos Polenta, with the Progenier wine, I think is a fantastic sparkling wine. The next wine to look out for me, and Pepe Reginato as well. Somebody's mentioned him, and I think he does some really weird things with sparkling wines, like a sparkling Bonarda and a Syrah and all sorts of things. I think a place that's really exciting again is the Deep South, Otronia. I think Sarmiento and the Pinot and the Chardonnay they're growing in the south of Chubut will make world-class sparkling wines. Not yet, because the vines are young and the wines need a bit more time on lees, on tirage. But I think that project is super exciting.
All right, my last question, my friend. Do you remember? I know you're in love with Per Se right now. I think that's one that's has a soft spot in your heart for sure.
Yeah.
And I've sort of seen how they've been climbing up in the past years until they made it to the top-notch position. Do you remember your first love of Argentina wine 28 years ago? Like the first Caballero de la Cepa was a big wine back then in the early 90s. Do you remember what was your first love?
Yes, I do. The first visit I went on in 1992 to a place where I thought this is amazing because they had old wines was to Norton. And I tasted wines with Jorge Riccitelli, who's the father of Matias Riccitelli, and Norton was amazing. And I think I came back and I wrote about Privada. And I said, is this the best value wine in the world? Yes, I think it is, or something. And it was in odd bins and it was cheap. And they sold masses because they put it in the window that said, because I was writing for a newspaper. So it said, Tim Atkin says, Norton Privada is the best value wine in the world. Come and find out, or something. So they sold lots of it. But I have a very strong memory.
Cabernet or Malbec? What was it?
I think it was Privada as a blend. Yes, it would have been Malbec.
Privada.
Reserva Privada. It would have been then probably. Yeah, I think Malbec, Cabernet Sauvignon, maybe some Cab Franc or Petit Verdot or something. But I remember those wines, and that wine was, that was a pretty amazing turning point, I'd say. Yeah.
And I promise this is the last question. I know you have a lot of friends.
I'm having a good time.
Okay, I thought it was super late for you, but
no,
you're
it's
a wine
fine.
drinker.
I'm enjoying my bottle of wine.
You're a master of wine. I'm just a blogger, and most of my friends know that I'm obsessed about wine, so they come to me asking for recommendations and asking, whenever they're gonna go out with their wives or their friends, find me a wine. Sometimes they send me pictures of the wine list on a Friday night or a Saturday night. Do you find yourself recommending Argentine wines to friends of yours?
Absolutely, yeah. Particularly the newer generation. I mean, 12 bottles of Semillon arrived from Matias Riccitelli. I didn't buy it. He didn't give it to me. I bought them from their importer from Hallgarten the other day. And I tweeted about it and said, I can't get enough of this wine. And several people have bought it as a result of their recommendation. So yes, I do. I tell people a lot about the wines. And last weekend, I did a tasting for 67 Pall Mall, which is a kind of wine club in London, which has been closed. Well, it's shuttered because of the pandemic at the moment. And they're doing 67 Pall Mall tastings at home. And I did a tasting of 6 wines from Argentina last weekend. So, yeah, and that was great. And we showed top wines. We showed the 15 Cheval, actually, which was pretty good.
Have you ever thought of making your own wine in any part of the world?
No, because I really respect people who do it, and I know how difficult it is. I'm too busy doing what I do. I think let great people make wine. It'd be fun. I mean,
have you ever said to yourself after a long day of tasting wines, when you go back to your hotel, saying, "Well, maybe I'm not making wine, but whenever I'm tasting," and you give advice, maybe here the oak is too big, or maybe here the sugar. Do you ever find yourself making wine by opinion, through your opinions?
Yeah, well, I mean, a bit, but some wine writers, and I try very hard not to do this, think they're winemakers. They're not winemakers. You know, we're not winemakers. We're wine writers, and we don't know how to make wine, or most of us don't. I think you can give advice if somebody says, "How would you blend this?" I like blending wine a lot. I really enjoy doing that. Would I? You know, I've done 2 vintages, and did I enjoy them? If I'm honest, not really. You know, I think working wineries is actually pretty boring. You know,
somebody says it's more
the physical process of picking grapes. I mean, it's, you know, the people are great, but the job is fun.
Es más divertido tomar los vinos.
Sí.
It's more fun
Excelente.
to drink the wine.
Sí. Estoy totalmente de acuerdo contigo. ¿Quién dijo esto?
María Laura Gian.
Thank you, Maria Laura.
Yeah, she said that. Have you ever, without naming any names, and I know you're very respectful with your pros, but sometimes the scores is not necessarily what the winemaker or the owners expect. Have you ever been called, "Hey man, you gave us a very poor service"? Has that ever happened?
There was years ago in the days of fax machines. Do you remember fax machines?
Of course, I'm 43. You know, I'm not.
Exactly. You remember the fax machines? There was a guy in New Zealand, and I wrote something rude about his wine, and I think I said, "This guy has such amazing vineyards. What a shame that the quality of the vineyard is not reflected in the wine." I wasn't very rude. Anyway, and this guy used to send me these faxes. These faxes have come through, just saying, "You know, you're a piece of shit. You know, you said this." But the point is, now with Twitter, people can just abuse you all day long if they want to.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it doesn't happen to me. It doesn't have to be very often. And to be honest, if it does, I tend to write back, and then if they keep arguing, I just say, "Well, that's your point of view, and I don't agree with it." You know, I mean, have a great day.
I love when you post labels that I've never seen before, but it just piqued my curiosity. You know, I think that's something that we all owe to you, because I've never seen, well, I should never say never, but hardly have I seen you tweeting about a super commercial brand, right? Well, that one, Nicolás Catena Zapata, as we said, is
somebody said que está tomando team.
Oh, Nicolás Catena Zapata 2013. But
I do write about commercial wines. I mean, I have a lot of respect for what Conti-Toro do, for example, what Trivento do in Argentina. You know, what Trapiche do. I think they do some amazing stuff. You know, Finqueras Moras. You look at that wine, the Paz Malbec. That's a fantastic wine. I think, you know, the Trivento Malbec, you know, how many millions of cases they make is a really good wine. And some, you know, Casiero Cabernet, fantastic wine. So I do write about those wines, and I always have a selection of value for money wines. I think it's important, for wine writers, not just to recommend wines that cost $200 a bottle, right? Because
we have our dear friend Roberto Ijalba from Bodega Santalba saying, "I hope you can come back to Rioja this year." Oh, Casarena. Lisa M says Casarena. Casarena makes good wines, for sure.
Very good.
Casarena. Very good wines. All right, my dear friend, it's very late for you. It's been a treat. And I'm going to be posting this on my social media. Take care. And I hope you have a great night. Bye-bye, my friend. Take care.
Un abrazo a todos.
Un abrazo. Bye-bye. Ciao.